I created an Age of Empires 4 tier list when the game first released, and it would be fair to say that my opinions and experiences have changed a lot over time, and so too have those of the community. This is my more definitive, updated Age of Empires 4 tier list. Let's jump straight in. The English. The English, for me, are an A tier civ in Age of Empires 4. I think reason being roughly threefold. Firstly, they are, I think, probably the easiest to play. They definitely earn their 1-star difficulty rating. They are very straightforward, right? The longbows are incredible. Their unique unit is still so good, and I absolutely think it rockets them up to the A tier. I think also that the feudal age push potential with the English, particularly where you combine those longbows, maybe with some battering rams and pikes, maybe just by themselves, but either way, there's some really great potential for that as well. Overall, the English are a fantastic civ in AOE4 and definitely earn their solid A tier ranking. I think also they're a really good base point to compare against other civs. I think next it makes sense to talk about the French. The French are, in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure I'm not alone on this, absolutely an S tier civ in Age of Empires 4. They're probably the best civ in the game. Now, I know I said the English were the easiest to play, in that they're quite straightforward, simple to understand. The French are similar. They're easy to play because they're straightforward-ish. Maybe not quite as straightforward as the English, but very close. But more importantly, they're so overpowered. They are so overpoweredly good. They're very good across all eras of the game. They are fantastic. They have great economic bonuses in particular, but really across the board, you're not going to struggle. Choose the French if you want to win. In general, I do think they are still the best civ in this game. Next up, we have the Holy Rollies themselves. It's the Holy Roman Empire. Neither holy nor Roman nor an empire. They are, in my opinion, one of the civs that will still rank fairly similarly to where I placed them last time, but I have to say, I've found them to be a little mediocre and a little underwhelming. Fairly straightforward to play, but a little more nuanced than the likes of the French or the English. I think that HRE is particularly perhaps weaker in the feudal age than the other two that I've already ranked, and really most civs in the game. They are perhaps also slightly pigeonholed, something I didn't talk about last time, but I find, at least in my own experience, when I'm playing HRE, I tend to fall back on the same very specific things, and the very specific strategies that I'm using aren't game-breaking, or necessarily even that strong. The HRE are, in my opinion, still a versatile choice to pick up and play as, but really they just don't compare to the likes of the English or the French. Why I've chosen them to rank them third in this video is because I think that they flow on from them nicely at the mediocre and fairly average, but not ridiculously weak, B tier. Next up, we have someone who's moved around quite a bit since my last video, actually. The last few weeks of Age of Empires 4 have been very exciting, and I think they've treated the Abbasid particularly well. A difficult one for me to rank, but let me take you through. I think that the House of Wisdom is very good, perhaps a little better than we thought at first. I think also there is huge potential with the Abbasid to really boom with a 50% discount on your villagers. You can really snowball away here. I also think that there's some potential for cheaper siege unit plays very early on as well. However, and I think one of the considerable downsides, not only their complexity, but also the fact that they're probably a bad matchup against the most dominant civs in the game at the moment. Now, that doesn't necessarily take away from their pure power ranking, but it is something to consider when you're considering who you want to play. I'm going to place Abbasid around the A or B tier, and to be honest, I'm still slightly undecided. It's either going to be a low A or a high B. I'm going to place them at a low A tier. I think they've made good grounds. Obviously, they haven't changed. It's just we've changed as a community, and the meta is obviously constantly changing as well, and I think that that's served the Abbasid Dynasty quite well, ranking them at an A tier. Next up, we have Delhi, the Delhi Sultanate. A civ that I'm still, unfortunately, going to have to rank very lowly. A slightly more complicated one to play than others, absolutely. I think weaker overall, in general, is a fair assumption. Their elephants are fantastic and fun and strong, but still, as I talked about last time, just not able to either be brought online quickly enough or cheaply enough to really make a significant impact. They're arguably not really a great tactical choice in many situations as well. I'm afraid the Delhi Sultanate is smashing itself in at a C tier still. Thinking about the D tier ranking, to be honest, as well, but I'm going to place it at C tier for now. Next, I think we should talk the Mongols. And I'm going to surge them right up here next to France, not in front of the French ranks, but behind them. The Mongols, I think, are absolutely an S-tier civ in this game. We've seen some ridiculously aggressive rush strategies with them since the game released, but more broadly, I think they're a very flexible civ. They are viable in almost really any age to pursue most traditional strategies. They're a really, really fun one to play as well. That is subjective, of course, but I do think the Mongols are very fun. They are super good as well in the late game. Of course they are more difficult to play just by the way that their civ is structured, but man, I think they are strong, they are versatile, you can play loads of different options with them, and they absolutely deserve an S tier ranking. Following hot on their heels, actually, I've saved two spicy ones for last. Next, we have, following on from the Mongols, the Rus. And you know what? I reckon the Rus are super good as well. Smashing them up into the S tier. You see, I've got more S tier ranked civs than I did before. We can see a general power distribution moving upwards. And I think that the Rus are no different. They are very good on water maps in my experience, which is beneficial for them. I think they're great at all phases of the game, even through into the late game. And I think that their early game potential, especially looking at their food and gold bonuses, are off the charts. The Rus are more difficult to play, like the Mongols, but man, they are worthwhile. Absolutely, I think deserving of an S tier ranking, although I should note that I've purposefully put them toward the end of the S tier, because I do think that really you could also place them in an A tier and still be pretty happy with where they're placed. I'm going to leave them at the S tier ranking though. And last, but certainly not least, the Chinese. Another one that I've struggled to rank a little bit, to be honest, because they are indeed one of the more complex civs, right? They absolutely are. You've got that big dynasty button staring back at you. So many dynasties and landmark considerations when you're playing as the Chinese. Definitely making them complex. I think they excel in particular at the sort of mid or late game stages. In the early game, you'll struggle, and I'm absolutely deducting points from them from that. I don't think they're particularly competitive in the early game. Sure, you can maybe on certain maps use walls as your friend, try and sort of turtle up, get your booming boost, and then surge out towards the middle and the late game when you've had a chance to work through your dynasties or research your texts, whatever you're trying to do. I think that as we play even more, and as we're likely to see some changes to civs and cultures in AOE4, the Chinese could continue to move upwards in the rankings, but I'm going to place them at a high B tier, nearly an A, but probably a high B tier for me, again straddling this boundary. These two actually in particular, similar and hard to rank. I think that the Chinese are very strong, and as I say, maybe as we master them even further, they may move further up the ranks. But for me, they're a strong enough, but nothing to write home about, weaker in the early game, somewhat mediocre choice in comparison to the rest, and I'm placing them at a B tier. Thank you very much for watching my updated Age of Empires 4 tutorial tier list. Super duper spectacular video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.